You know that feeling, right? When you're at work and you feel completely trapped by a process. Like your own common sense is just being totally overruled by some rule book. Well, that's exactly what we're going to dig into today. This slow, steady erosion of human judgment that's behind it all.
It's such a weird paradox, isn't it? I mean, we create all these rules and procedures to make things smoother, safer, more efficient. But then, somehow, we end up all tangled up in them, feeling like they're the one thing holding us back. So, what we're going to do here is figure out exactly why that happens.
Okay, let's start by zooming in on that one specific moment. You know the one I'm talking about? The one we've all felt, where a super simple task just blows up into this huge, complex ordeal. It's that moment of just, pure bureaucratic frustration.
So picture this. You can see the finish line. You know exactly what needs to be done. You know how to do it fast, how to do it well. But then, bam, you hit a wall. It's a form or a required approval or some step in a process that makes absolutely no sense for what you're doing, but you have to do it anyway. It's mandatory.
I swear that's the internal monologue of pretty much all of modern work. It's that feeling deep in your gut that your own expertise and, frankly, your common sense are being completely ignored by some rigid, inflexible system. The goal is right there, plain as day, but the path laid out for you is this long, winding, inefficient detour.
So, when we're stuck in that frustrating moment, what's the first thing we do? Our first instinct almost always is to find someone to blame. But as we're about to find out, that's usually the wrong diagnosis.
It feels so personal, doesn't it? It really feels like someone, somewhere, is either being deliberately difficult or maybe they're just not thinking. Our go-to assumption is that the problem has to be the people who are running the system.
So, on one hand, our assumption is that it's all personal. You know, lazy colleagues, bad managers. But the reality, the problem is systemic. The system itself is actually built to work in a way that has almost nothing to do with the people in it. And, this is the classic lineup of suspects, right? We point the finger at bad managers for making up pointless rules, or lazy colleagues for just ticking a box without thinking, or maybe it's just people who are scared to take on any responsibility. Sometimes we just throw our hands up and call it a culture of incompetence. But again, this is looking in the wrong place.
Okay, so if it's not about the people, then what is it about? Well, to get to the real answer, we have to look right past the individuals. We need to analyze the system itself and ask one really simple question. What is its actual goal?
And the key idea here is something called organizational safety. See, a system, especially a big one, absolutely craves predictability. Its main job is to get rid of surprises and minimize risk. And when you think about it, a moment of individual brilliance, a creative shortcut, a clever solution, that's unpredictable by its very nature. A rule, on the other hand, totally predictable. The system is always going to choose the predictable, safer option.
Now, this is the really fundamental shift in thinking you have to make. We assume the whole point of a process is to make a task faster or better. But from the system's point of view, the number one goal is just to prevent failure. It's basically a defensive mechanism that's designed to make sure the system itself survives and stays stable above everything else. So, how does a new process even get created? Well, it usually follows a really predictable pattern. Step 1, a mistake happens. Someone does something and it causes a problem. The next logical step for the organization is to create a new process to make sure that specific mistake can never, ever happen again. And just like that, an area that used to need human judgment is now locked down by a rule. The probability of that one error happening again, it drops to 0. And from the system's perspective, that's a huge success. The new process worked.
But here's the catch. That win has an unintended side effect. It kicks off this powerful reinforcing cycle that just gets stronger over time, and it slowly starts to squeeze human judgment out of the picture completely.
So it all starts with more process. Every time there's a problem, a new rule gets added to the pile, and they just start to accumulate.
And that naturally leads to less judgment being used. The more rules there are in the playbook, the fewer chances people have to think for themselves.
Which then causes our judgment skills to get weaker. They make sense, right? Judgment is like a muscle. If you stop using it, it gets weaker. When people are just following a checklist all day, their ability to handle a new situation and make a good call starts to fade.
So what happens when a totally new problem pops up, one that isn't covered by the rules? Well, people with those weaker judgment skills are way more likely to mess up. They're out of practice, so they don't handle the unexpected very well.
And what's the system's answer to this brand new mistake? You guessed it.
It creates a demand for even more process. Make another rule to prevent that mistake from happening again. And just like that, the loop closes and the cycle starts all over, but this time it's even stronger. More rules, less judgment, weaker skills, more mistakes, and around we go.
Now, this whole thing seems so obviously counterproductive, right? So you have to ask the question, why doesn't the system fix itself? Why doesn't somebody just step in and say, hey, stop the madness?
Well, the reason this cycle just keeps on going comes down to one single thing: visibility. A mistake is visible. It leaves a paper trail. You can point to the lost money, the angry customer, the safety report. But what about a brilliant creative solution that was prevented by a process that is completely invisible? There's no way to measure the value of a great idea that never even got off the ground.
And this really shows you the logic of the system perfectly. On one side, you have the cost of a single, very visible mistake, and in the system's eyes, that cost is huge and terrifying. On the other side, you have the cost of a lost opportunity, an idea that never happened. Because it's invisible, its cost is basically zero. So the incentive is crystal clear. Always prevent the one big visible failure, even if that means giving up thousands of smaller, invisible successes.
And this is why it's not really a people problem. Think about it. Even a manager with the best intentions, someone who really wants to empower their team, is totally trapped by this logic. If they tell their employee to ignore a rule and it works out great, nobody even notices. But if it goes wrong, that manager is now on the hook for a very visible mistake. The personal and professional risk is just way too high.
So when we pull all the way back and look at the entire picture, we end up with a conclusion that is, well, it's both incredibly frustrating and, at the same time, perfectly logical.
In the end, this slow creep of bureaucracy that drives us all crazy isn't some accident, and it's not a sign that everyone's incompetent. It's the completely rational, totally predictable outcome of a system doing exactly what it was designed to do: survive. And the way it survives is by stamping out unpredictability, one human judgment at a time. Which leaves us with a really tough question: what's the hidden price we're all paying for that kind of safety?